everyone, it's Bren here and welcome to the first garden update of spring 2020. And since I've seen you last, the weather has done a complete turnaround. We've had some beautiful warm days and some of them have also been quite hot as well, which has been lovely. I've managed to spend a lot of time out here getting the garden ready for spring, sowing seeds, clearing garden beds. I probably did a bit too much because I think by about Wednesday I was absolutely exhausted, both physically and mentally. I had to take the day off, but I'm feeling back to normal now, so let's take a look around. It was National Wattle Day here in Australia this week, as well as it being another very special day to celebrate. I just can't believe that spring has finally arrived. All of these garden beds in here are filled up with plants. Some are quite tightly packed in. I'm just waiting for most of them to start filling out the space. It's been a really good year for celery. There's only about 4 plants in here. I'm not really sure what we're going to use it all for because I've got so much. You might notice that the stems aren't as thick as you would see in the supermarkets when you buy them. I think with celery you need to give them a lot of water and fertilizer to get those nice big plump juicy stems. But having said that, these are still quite delicious. In fact, I think probably because they're slightly smaller they have a more intense flavour. If any of you have any good celery recipes, besides, you know, adding it into soups and spaghetti bolognese and stews, I'd love to hear from you because I have quite a lot here to use up. The lettuce is starting to bolt. Do you see the way it's kind of stretching out, and it will soon form flower heads there to produce seeds. Where I live, I'm coming to the end of the time where I can grow lettuce. Unless I find a space that doesn't get as much sun in a more shaded area. Otherwise it's just too hot to grow them here in late spring, especially during summertime. Just giving you a quick look around. So here I have some silver beet. I've already started to harvest off this. Even though the plants are quite small, I can pick a few leaves off each one. I splashed out a bit this week and purchased this plant, which is a wasabi plant. It was quite expensive, about $22. And we love sushi, and a couple of my husband and my oldest son, they really like wasabi, so I thought I'd give it a try. It's my first time ever growing this. It was definitely an impulse buy, so I need to read up a bit more about it and I'll give you some more information maybe next week. There's celeriac in this bed, more weeds. I have to keep on going around all the garden beds and weeding. I've got so many of them. Yeah, so I'm waiting for them to take off. A mixture of plants in here, beetroots, turnips. I can see a poppy flower, borage, things going to seed. Lots of Johnny Jump violas that I just left in here. And there's one purple sprouting broccoli. This bed's a bit of a mixed bag. I really want to have success with foxgloves this year, so I put some in here knowing that these beds have really good soil. There's a poppy, that's calendula there, some more self-seeded Johnny Jump viola. These are rainbow chard. There is one fennel that I'm actually going to just leave. I'm not going to harvest that one. I'm going to let it grow and go to flower. There's sorrel over in the corner. I think that's a dianthus. So you can see it's always a constant struggle with me between planting the edibles and the flowers. In this garden bed I have some primulas, where I mentioned last week that they don't seem to be doing as well as previous years, but these 3 plants seem to be fine, so I've just left them in here along with some different varieties of kale. And look what I just spotted. Some mint everywhere in this area because I made a mistake a few years ago. I put mint straight into the ground and now I'm finding it everywhere. So I think this one's yeah, this one's the worst. I also have chocolate mint in the ground too. I can see it re-sprouting in just outside this area. Oh well, I do like mint. We all love mint, so my kids should help keep this under control. They love coming out here and just like breaking pieces off. I'll show them this and hopefully it'll be gone by next week. On the other archway into this raised garden bed area, I planted a passion fruit vine. Must have been about a year ago or so. It does this, it kind of like dies off a little bit, it loses some of its foliage in winter, but it's still looking pretty good, so hopefully in a few weeks time it'll start to fill out more. Lots of radishes in here. So I've had success with the what are these, firecracker radishes, which I have shown you before, but just in case you haven't seen them, I'll pull one out to show you. These, they look kind of similar to carrots, so they've done really well. But you can see with my other varieties, they're all starting to bolt now, where they're starting to go to flower. And these ones here are the watermelon radishes. And unfortunately they're just not big enough yet. They haven't developed their base. See, it just hasn't happened. But not to worry, because you may remember last year, if you followed me along, I had a big patch of these that also went to flower and they were absolutely gorgeous. So I'll leave this little section in here and wait a few weeks until you see this. You'll be shocked at how beautiful the flowers are. It wouldn't be spring to me without having a few Dutch irises in the garden. This one here is in this garden bed that has a mixture of different plants. There's fennel, there is also chard, there's spring onions, and back over here I have a whole bunch of shallots. This is the rocket or arugula patch, which has gone to flower. The bees are really enjoying them. And you can see behind this wild looking area, all of the self-seeded African daisies are blooming. These are considered a little bit weedy where I live, but I just absolutely adore their huge big blooms. And I love how easy it is with self-seeders, because I don't have to do anything. They just pop up when they're ready, and once these have all finished flowering, I can either cut the plants right back or I can pull them out and put something completely different in here. I was thinking maybe some sunflowers up against that blue garage door would look beautiful, or even a big patch of big bright colourful zinnias. It's pretty hot out here today, almost 30 degrees, and you can see that some of the plants are drooping a bit. Like this is my kohlrabi. I need to get in here and give this a good water this evening. But look how many flowers are on the mizuna. You can see that some of the leaves here are a little bit limp as well, and I've said to you before, you can actually eat these leaves, but I've left the plant to go to flower for the bees and other beneficial insects. Some plants in here are doing really well, like the lacy Phacelia, which is another great plant to attract pollinators, and there are a few flower buds on these as well. This plant is kind of sprawled out quite a lot. You might remember last year I had some of these in the raised garden beds. They took up so much space I decided to put them in here instead. I'm now standing at the back of the garden bed, so along with the weeds that I desperately need to clear out, as well as mulching this area, I have a few foxgloves that were put in like everything else back in autumn time. They're filling out quite nicely, and these will add a bit of height to the back of the bed. They get to about 1.5 to 1.8 meters high. And then we have the broad beans. My poor broad beans, they've been attacked by aphids at the moment, which I've only just noticed while recording this garden update, particularly this one over here in the middle. It looks pretty okay, but then if you take a closer look, you can see it's absolutely covered in them. They almost blend in. They're little green little insects, and they just suck the life out of the plant. Now what I can do now to try and keep this under control is I can just use my fingertips and pinch off the aphids. I also like to just make a really quick organic spray, which is pretty much just washing up liquid and water, which seems to work too. But the best thing to get rid of them is ladybugs, and I'm just waiting on the ladybugs to arrive. But then I'm also thinking too, is it worth leaving these plants in here? Because look how sad and pathetic they look. I had a beautiful grid going on, and now there's only a few scattered here and there. I might be better off just pulling them out, you know, putting it down to a bit of a loss for this year and try again next year. And tucked in here as well, I have lots of rainbow chard plants. I picked a few of their leaves. You can see they come in a rainbow of colours. I have these plants dotted all around the garden. These are really nice, just simply chopped up, stems and all, and added into a salad. You can even add in a few edible flowers as well. I've now stepped back a few metres to take a bigger look at this area. So this garden bed here, they're both linked together. I have a bit of a semicircle going on there. The grass has kind of died off at the moment, but it's how it connects the two garden beds in a like kind of loop. This is the bed that I worked on during the week, and while it looks okay at the moment, there's a big mess going on underground. In this garden bed, I have a blackberry bush that is really such an aggressive weed. It's really hard to get rid of. I'm almost tempted to just pull every single plant that's left in here out of the ground, completely dig up the soil and get all of the roots out of here. Otherwise, it's just going to keep on coming back. It's just ferocious. Also lurking underneath the soil here are lots of passion fruit suckers. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I had a whole passion fruit vine growing up along here. And since about last year, it kind of died off and it was putting out a lot of suckers. And you can see here that I have so many in the ground that are just really hard to pull out. This one's not too bad because it's quite small, which is all right. But look at the size of these ones here. They're huge. I really think I should just come in here and dig out this entire bed. Otherwise, it's just going to be a pain all summer. How different does it look though without having the passion fruit vine on the fence? It's just so bare now, I think. And especially not having it growing over this side gate, which leads into the back garden. It kind of takes away the mystery, I think, a bit of what's behind the corner. But I think this summer I'm going to plant something else up on here. Maybe something a bit quick growing and long term too. In this tray of seedlings, I have a big issue with all of my hollyhocks. You can see that it has yellow spotting on some of the leaves. This one here is particularly bad, and if you take a look underneath, you can see these kind of orange mounds, and what you're looking at there, I believe, is rust fungus. This can happen to hollyhock plants and other plants in the same family if they are in the wrong conditions. So if it's really humid, it's receiving a lot of water from overhead. You can buy sprays to remove this, but what I'm going to do, because these are quite bad, I'm just going to remove all of these, and then hopefully the plant will be okay, because I do have a few bits of foliage that seem all right. Like this one's pretty clear, but I will check underneath the other ones. With any diseased leaves or plants like this, I never put them into the compost bin because you risk spreading it around to other plants in your garden. So what you can do with these, you can either cut them all off and burn them, or you can put them into a plastic bag and put them straight into your rubbish bin. The Pandoria snowbells, which only had buds on it a few weeks ago, is now absolutely covered in flowers. I think if you got your timing right and you were having a wedding in a few years' time, around early spring, you could put one of these plants in the ground to cover your bridal archway, because that's what I think of when I'm looking at this. I just think it'd be perfect for a wedding. Beside the lemon tree on this other archway, I have my other Pandoria, the Australian native climbing plant. This one here is called Pandoria red bells. As I said before, many times, you can have a beautiful garden even if you're on a budget. You just need sometimes a bit of patience. And most of my native plants I buy as tube stock. So this is the label for the one that you see here, which I put in a few years ago now, at least 2 years. It was so small, but now it's finally starting to fill out this archway. And you know, if I was to buy this plant even half the size that it is now, it would cost me so much more money than what I paid for it, which was only about $3.50. There's actually a wheelbarrow underneath this pile. It's been put to good use this week, where I have been spending hours and hours clearing out garden beds, getting them ready for spring planting. And we are just so fortunate to have an abundance of lemons. You might think that those ones there are on the ground. They're actually not. They're just completely drooped down because the branches are packed with fruit. It's weighing them down to the ground. You can see here, look at the amount just on this one branch. I do have to say I feel a bit overwhelmed at the moment, because not only am I getting the garden ready for spring, sowing seeds, planting out seedlings, amending soil, but I also have so much fruit that I need to try and preserve. I have made a start this week, only with 1 jar, but it's better than nothing. So what you're looking at here is my first preserved lemon, and pretty much what's in here is sliced up lemon, layered in amongst some honey. I've also put some star anise in there, and you leave it for about 24 hours. And the juice just extracts from the lemon, and it makes a beautiful syrup that you can add into like tea if you want to make some tea. You can also pour it on top of your oats in the morning, or on yogurt as well. So you can see it's quite runny, which is surprising. You'd imagine that it wouldn't be, considering there's so much honey in here. This also makes a really nice gift if you're going around to your friend's house. Well, that's what I'm planning on doing. I have a few of these smaller jars, so I'll be able to do that. And you can keep this in the fridge for quite some time. I do always get a little bit nervous with the recommendations of how long to keep it, because I would tend to keep this now for a few weeks, but you know, probably to be on the safer side, if I was saying it to you guys, I'd probably say up to a week. And of course, when you're doing any kind of preserves, you need to make sure that your jar is completely sterilized before use. At the very back of the property is the fan garden, where I have been harvesting some food this week. The beetroot's still not quite ready, and for everything else, I've had a bit of mixed success. So the broccoli hasn't been good this year. You can see over there, it's just going to flower before it forms a head, and it did that a few weeks back. Although I do have a couple of purple sprouting broccoli plants at the back, which are looking good. But the biggest success in here has been the cauliflower. Oh my goodness, you can see that I've harvested one head this week. Absolutely amazing sized heads that are really nice and compact, and I've got about 8 of these, and the thing is, they're pretty much all now ready at the same time. So what I did with the first one I harvested this week was I made cauliflower bake, and thankfully that's a very popular dish here in my house, so I'll probably make that with some more of them as well. And then I'm thinking I might do some pickled cauliflower. And if you've got any suggestions, I would love to hear from you, because I have quite a few here. Maybe next year I might try and do a bit more succession planting, so I don't get them all harvesting at the same time. I've got so many of them. But yeah, I'm just so happy that it turned out well, because I don't know if you remember last year, like what's happening to the broccoli this year, the heads were really loose formed. They were still edible, but they didn't look as nice as the ones that you can see here now. The cabbage as well, I mean, I could still harvest it, but it's looking so dismal. Look at the absolute state of it. It's been chewed so much. This is probably the best head here. And I'm excited to harvest these. I'm definitely, with some of these, I'm going to make some sauerkraut. Here are my golden potted pea plants. I have one that's still kind of hanging in there, but you can see the other ones are pretty much dead, and that's because they've been dug out from the base, unfortunately. You know, we'll just have to keep on soldering on, and I'll pull these out and put something else in its place. And it's the same with my purple potted peas. I've only got about 2 plants left. I'll go over there now and show you them. This is where I had the purple potted pea plants. I still have about 3 of them left, but some of them have been dug out as well, unfortunately. There's a few peas on here. Aren't they just so pretty? I love that deep purple colour. Really easy to see when you're harvesting them. And the other plus about these plants is they're beautiful flowers too. How do these weeds kind of sneak up on you? I didn't even notice this until I came down to take a close-up of these peas. Well, I think that's about it for this week. It's all I can manage to fit in. I have to go back inside. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all again next Friday.